Welcome to the April 24th, 2017 meeting of the Marquette City Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, could we have the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Cambenzi?
Here.
Commissioner Conley?
Here.
Commissioner Frazier?
Here.
Commissioner Plord?
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini?
Here.
And Mayor Campana.
Here. We have the agenda in front of us. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Commissioner Conley,
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
is there a second? Commissioner Frazier?
Second.
All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? That carries 7-0. Announcements, I do not have any. Boards and committees. Tonight we're going to have recognition of an outgoing member. That's Terry Rockwood. Terry, if you could meet me at the podium, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Little roadblock. Terry is an outgoing member. She served on the Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee for a period of, how long? Couple
6 years.
6 years. Well, thank you very much. You know, the city appreciates that. You volunteered on your own time, and very important committee. They do a lot of things there, and you were part of it. Sorry to see you go, but we're glad that you were able to do what you have done. As a little memento, the city would like to present you with a couple items. We have a certificate of appreciation for volunteer effort on the Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee. Thank you for your hard work and dedication serving the citizens of this community. Thank you for that. And something a little more meaningful, we have a t-shirt. You can wear it proudly. It's the Marquette t-shirt. It's got the logo in front and it's got items in the back. So there you go. Thank you, and thank you very much. Would you care to say a few words?
Sure.
Thanks again.
I'd just like to say it was a pleasure working for the city as a citizen and volunteering and working under Carl Zuger, John Swenson, and Andrew McIver. You have some great staff working for Parks and Rec.
Thank you. Tonight we have one reappointment. That would be William Thompson to the Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee for term ending 4/1 of 2020. Is there a motion to approve? Commissioner Conley.
I move that we reappoint Bill Thompson, Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee for a term ending April 1, 2020.
Is there a second? Commissioner Frazier.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? That also carries 7-0. Tonight we have two presentations. The first presentation is the Lake Superior Community Partnership Update. CEO Amy Klickner will present. Amy?
Thank you, Mayor. Like you mentioned, I am Amy Klickner, CEO of the Lake Superior Community Partnership, and I hear there's a man in the basement that once you say those magic words of who you are, then everything goes on the TVs. See? So I think it's really, I thought that was pretty cool. It's not something I can screw up pretty much. So anyway, I wanted to just come and do a brief update on our 2016 numbers for you. I won't take a lot of time. You have information in your packets. I did hand out some additional information. And if you have any questions tonight or as you're looking through the information, I'm happy to answer those, and you know where to find me. Just quickly to remind you of our staff, there are 6 of us. We have 1 open position right now in business development, and so we are currently hiring. But this is just an example of the expertise and the network that we have built over the last 19 years within our organization. 2 certified economic developers. We're an accredited economic development organization, and those 2 certifications, we're the only organization in the Upper Peninsula to have any of those. And as you can see, my staff is certified in most things, including economic modeling, research, business development, finance, economic gardening, exporting, and all the types of things that businesses need as we go out and meet with them. Just talking about 2016, we served 461 clients last year, and this is a breakdown of general categories of services that they needed. Now you'll note that those numbers, at least by my Nagani math, and Captain Lorla can correct me if I'm wrong, that it doesn't add up to 461. That's because typically when you're working with a client, they need more than one service. They don't just come in typically for one item. So this breaks down, and you can see the different types of services, from writing a business plan, financing, site location, and sometimes it's just simply being connected to the right people. I say to my board and my staff over and over and over again that business retention and expansion is a key to successful economic development strategy. 80% of your growth comes from within. So we should be spending as close to 80% of our time and resources on companies within. And you can see in 2016, we were about 75% time and resources spent on business retention and expansion. We saw startups a lot more in 2016, so that's a little higher than it normally is at 23%. And then when you look at the attraction projects, bringing a new company in, those are the ones that are far and few between. Business attraction is very expensive and a very difficult and very competitive process with other communities across the country. I'm often asked, where are your clients from? Is it just Marquette, just Sawyer, just the West End? So what we do every quarter is break down a distribution of our clients, and this is the year distribution. And you can see it typically runs around the population base. So we obviously have more clients in the Marquette city and township, 2 surrounding townships, because there's more population here. And then we break it down from the west end of the community and then the south end of the community. The non-region specific clients are those that either have not made a decision on location or have multiple locations. So 5 years, we've been at this 19 years, but just showing you the last 5-year recap of the number of clients we've seen and some of the projects and jobs projected and impacted. You can see we've seen just under 2,000 clients in the last 5 years, and how we've grown from, I would say prior to 2012, trying to be all things to everybody, to an economic development organization and really focus on client base and growing the number of clients we get in front of every year. I guess there's a so what to that, and the so what is you're meeting with clients, they're doing things, we've got all this going on, you're doing startups, attraction. At the end of the day, if we're not generating wealth in the region, then economic development isn't successful. So again, 5 years of tracking, the percent changes from a Marquette County perspective, you can see that we're positive numbers, double-digit increases, in fact, except for population, which were just under 2%, which just under 2% in growth is pretty phenomenal in the Upper Peninsula for the last 5 years, as it's been a tough go, and we've seen a lot of other communities that aren't seeing any growth. But double-digit increases in things like property tax that help pay for our services, as you know, per capita income, median household income, and home sales and median home sale prices. So again, at the end of the day, economic development needs to be generating wealth within your community. We also manage the Economic Development Corporation for Marquette County, and in particular, a couple of their revolving loan funds. We currently have over $1 million out in loan proceeds with 10 separate clients. Our loan fund is pretty much maxed right now. We probably have $70,000, $80,000. We still encourage folks to come in because, again, this is a revolving loan fund, meaning as the folks pay back the loan, it builds back up the money we have to loan out. But this has been a really successful program, and we have a very low default rate on these higher risk loans. Government relations is extremely important. When we talk and work with businesses, they're very focused on the day, the fire of the day, working on their own business, making payroll, and those types of things. We are the eyes and ears of so many businesses, and that's our job. You know, we don't expect every business to be able to spend an enormous amount of time following legislation at the state and federal level. Larger employers have maybe a department or a person that are doing that, but for the mid-sized and small businesses, they're not. So we've really put a focus on how do we build those relationships, not just at the local level, but the state and federal level. How do we stay engaged in advocacy? One of the things we don't do is we certainly don't endorse candidates in any way, shape, or form. But between the Marquette County Ambassadors, which is under our umbrella, and our Government Relations Task Force, we spend a lot of time researching, making trips to Lansing, making sure that we're in the right place at the right time, and also hosting legislators. We just hosted Senator Stabenow and Congressman Bergman both in the last month here to talk about what's important to Marquette County. So these are some of the policy issues from 2016, and you see a lot of thumbs down. And what we got stuck in with a lot of the things like the dark store issue, which is now being referred to as tax tribunal reform, and some of those things that got stuck in lame duck and didn't go anywhere and died. So it was unfortunate that a lot of the things like energy kind of overtook lame duck, and a lot of those things sat. We've been very engaged in a lot of these things that have now been brought back up in this new legislation session, like the transformational TIF, Good Jobs for Michigan package, the dark stores again, which has been brought up again. And so we continue to work diligently on those and other issues as they come up. Our budget has always run, between $600,000 and $700,000, and we're pretty frugal with our dollars. We've worked really hard to diversify where they come from. We're still funded 80% privately, 20% publicly, but you can see the breakdown on some of our fundraising, some of our service contracts and grants, and again, trying not to put all of our eggs in one basket. As I believe, and you've heard me say it before, that when asked whose responsibility it is to fund economic development, my answer is it's all of ours. On the expense side, obviously, we spend a majority of our time on economic development, also marketing and member services, and then a very small percentage, 24%, goes to operations. Specifically to the city of Marquette, 257 of those clients were seen. You see the breakdown of the types. There's 3 current EDC loans for businesses in the city of Marquette. We have 54 of your sites listed in our Zoom Prospector, which is our sites and properties software. This is key because we're connected to the MLS, but then we also literally meet with realtors and drive around the city to find buildings that are for sale or for lease by owner, to make sure that we have as many of those on the list as possible, because when someone calls us and says, I need an X square foot building with a loading dock, we go right to Zoom Prospector and we can run a report and show them the list of buildings that meet those criteria. So if they're not in the list, then we have to start calling building owners, developers. So it's much more efficient, and this is also accessible to the public. It's right on our website. So if there's a site selector that's got a client that's looking for something, he can be in his jammies at home at 2 o'clock in the morning and look and see what we have available in Marquette County. And also about $3.6 million in private investment. We're surrounded with those 257 clients. Talent is the number one or close to the top of every business we meet with. and folks are just struggling. And I don't care if you're looking for a janitor, an electrician, or a physician. It's a struggle, and it's not just here, it's everywhere. So some of the things that we continue to work really hard on is how do we supplement the things that our partners at Michigan Works are doing, and really highlight some of the things that our investors need. We have Job of the Week. We've got an entire section on our website devoted to talent, in particular skilled trades, and we have the Hands on Michigan campaign that we worked on and continue to fund through mostly grant dollars and private sector funding. We have a talent development newsletter, network newsletter that highlights different things going on in talent. And then, of course, a good example of the talent pipeline is our electrical line technician program that we have with Northern Michigan University that will graduate its 15th class this Friday with an 80% placement rate in jobs in that area. We also, on the Project Empire, while the closing of the Empire Mine isn't in the city of Marquette, the impact is everywhere in our county and the region. And one of the things we worked on early on with Michigan Works, the MEDC, is finding a way to directly connect those displaced workers with businesses that are really trying to find that type of talent. So we were able to get the MEDC to fund a talent portal, and we called it Match Up. And we've been working with businesses to get loaded in their jobs, loaded in there, and then the displaced miners in there to make matches. So that's been going on probably since the beginning of the year is when we started to work with the employer side, employee side. It took the end of last year to get the employers logged in. But this is just an example of trying to find ways to make those matches as quickly and efficiently as possible so business can retain and grow. Airport, huge issue for economic development, including tourism. We continue to work with the county on customs. It's a difficult issue, a chicken and an egg, and it's been around since the 19 years that I've been at the partnership as to how we get a customs agent back out at Sawyer. But one of the things we did do is raise private funds to hire Trillion consultants. We hired private funds, and coupled with the Sawyer International Airport funds, have had them on board for over a year now. They did create an updated data that we needed to get in the door, and they gave us the connections and worked with us to speak with airlines. Retaining and growing our air service is really critical to economic development. We went out to Utah, where SkyWest is, and we've met with several other air service providers, and SkyWest manages Delta out of Marquette, and that's how we got the Minneapolis flight added that started in March. Numbers for that are extremely high as far as ridership, and we don't see a lot of impact on the current flights into Chicago and Detroit right now. So we're seeing also some fare being lowered to Detroit, which is another thing they had promised us to do, and we're starting to see that a little bit. We also did have an additional summer flight added to Detroit in the summer, and we're hoping that they will do that again this year. This is something that we need to continue to work on. You may have heard with Essential Air Service being lined out of the first budget at the out of the White House with President Trump. We are not an EAS-funded airport. We are the only one in the Upper Peninsula that is not. And one of the things that we want to make sure that we continue to share is, as this, and it'll be a fight because it's a very difficult line item to get rid of with a lot of the community airports in the country. However, Michigan has the most subsidized airports, second to Alaska. And in the Upper Peninsula alone, there's over $100 million a year in subsidies. So what we don't want forgotten is that Marquette County worked really hard to be a sustainable airport. And as the battle is going to where the subsidies fall and if there will be subsidies, we just don't want any backlash to those that have worked really hard to sustain and grow their air service. So that will be a continued discussion going on from the federal level. In your packets, I have our business services and our government services, and just a few quotes that obviously I can sit here and tell you all of the things we've done. but some of the different folks we work with here and in Lansing, and at the state level, just offering a few words of nice words, I guess, for the things that we've done with them. And I think I stayed in my time limit. And I'm
Thank you,
happy
Ann.
to answer any questions.
Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Baldini.
Thank you, Amy. A question. You have the investment fund. There's an angels group now that was organized, mostly of Marquette donors, I think. Do you tap into them? They're not part of your fund, I understand.
Correct. We haven't, and we really haven't seen an entrepreneur. So they're more connected to the Innovate Marquette, the Smart Zone, and so what we have learned to do very well with Ray is make sure that we're referring clients to the appropriate place. And we haven't had a client that would really meet the criteria to go there. If we did, we would send them to Ray to get them in front of that group in a heartbeat.
Any, the the Essential Air Service, and you're right, we're the only airport in the UP, and Michigan has more than any other, exception Alaska. One of the airports in UP gets $366 subsidy per passenger. So it really does put Marquette at a difficult competitive, and about 40-some%, high 40s, I think, fly in and out of Marquette Airport for the UP.
Right, just under 50% is the load that we carry for the Upper Peninsula. And the thing is, we're not trying to be. We want to be sensitive to our neighbors, and I've said that 100 times, but we've never been able to even utter the word EAS for all these years because it's just been something you just don't say, because it is going to be difficult if those decisions are made. We're sensitive to our neighbors, but we also want to make sure we're protecting what we've worked so hard for in our community.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cambenzi.
I want to ask a few questions. My first one, our mayor and our mayor pro tem and myself, I don't believe anyone else was there, but we went to a Operation Action UP meeting, and I thought it was fantastic. And to see all of the economic development going on in the UP, outside of Marquette, but yet how those industries utilize businesses in Marquette, Marquette businesses utilize them, our mines utilize them, kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities out there. I guess my first question is, what role, I guess, does the LSCP play with the Operation Action UP? And I guess forward thinking, where does the LSCP kind of imagine itself going, and kind of how can the city be a better part of that?
Okay, good question. Operation Action UP is a great group, and their keynote speaker this year was just phenomenal. It was Michael Langley from Greater MSP in Minnesota, and he runs what would be the equivalent of a partnership there, only obviously much, much bigger. He's also the president of the International Economic Development Council in his spare time this year, but just a phenomenal man who came here and shared a very, very pointed message about regionalism and how that is the trend in economic development. That is how we're going to be able to use our limited resources to the best of our ability. Now, as far as Operation Action UP, we do have a contract for them, so we manage all their back office. So we work on the event and things like that. They have a separate board. Their co-chairs are Tani Ferrarini and Brett French, and they were elected again to serve this year, 2017. But they also understand the importance of bringing those types of speakers here, and it's a great venue to do it because it brings the whole UP together. So to your point, exactly. I mean, I think the awards that they give out and they pull, because there is so much going on in the Upper Peninsula. If you go to Menominee, they make everything from saran wrap to helicopters. They make the subway ovens there. And we've got big ships being built, and we've got RTI and organics and Superior Extrusion, and you put all that together, and it's a great story to tell. As far as working more regionally, regional used to mean if you're two cities next to each other could work together. It's not like that anymore. Regional is more than two cities, a county, multi-counties. In a lot of places, it's multi-state. So where we're headed is we're looking to our partners in the Upper Peninsula and the 15 counties to say, how do we more consistently market, utilize our resources, and work collectively together to do a better job in the area code 906? And so currently, we've been working with Baraga County, and we've signed a contract with them. We are this close to getting a final contract with Dickinson County, and we're working with Menominee County. And we would be working together, utilizing the resources that the partnership has on a more regional level instead of everybody trying to duplicate everything. So funding can go in one area for all of these types of research and development and software, and we can get more people on the ground working in with the business community and focusing just on that instead of trying to do everything and trying to pay for everything. So I think it's a really exciting time in economic development in the Upper Peninsula right now. But I think we have to remember that we're the only ones that know where the dividing line is from what street to what street, what mascot to what mascot. And if we want to do anything or brand or market anything outside of the Upper Peninsula, we need to start doing it together to be more successful.
Yeah, thank you. That was perfect. Because what I felt when I went to that Operation Action UP meeting was I want to be a part of this. I feel like we should be more in the know of everything going on. I mean, there's times when I listen to the Marquette County meetings and it's like, oh, I didn't know they were doing that. And so the communication and the working together, I think I would like to see every city, every elected board, commission get together more or be able to work together more. And, the mechanism seems to be around economic development. And so I'm excited to hear more about, I guess, your plans for the future and how we can work together. I think there's definitely opportunities. I've been a big supporter of supporting more of a regional approach to this. So hopefully we'll be hearing from you soon again. So,
Well, at the end of the day, we're still 3% of the population in the state of Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. So we better maximize when we speak and how collectively we speak and what we do, because we're at a disadvantage right there. But as we know in the UP, whatever we set our mind to, we can do. We've proven that.
one last note, there are a few new members on here from the last year.
As far as government,
Yeah.
Yep, we're really, we've been at this for about 19 years. And again, we've never strayed from the 75-25 private to public split, and we're at 80-20 right now. This year, the county has been with us for all 19 years. This year, we were able to sign a contract with the city of Negaunee, which we're very happy to get them back on. And we're working with the city of Ishpeming right now and a couple other townships. We have a few on and some that come and go. With the 19, we'll never have all 19. It just, some of them don't even have staff kind of thing. But again, we're continuing to work toward, how do we work closer with all of our municipalities, because we're in this together. And I think we took a huge step forward. We have a proposal that will be on the table at some point here as well for the city of Marquette. And we just look forward to whatever we can do to work together and partner, because it is very important. Public and private need to work together.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks for always including the city commission in those meetings and the conferences you have.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Well, you touched on my question just there at the end, because I've had conversations with the city manager, and he indicated that you guys have spoke and that something will be coming forward for funding from the city's perspective from the LSCP. So my two questions before that comes forward is, when you do submit that to us, if you could do it earlier rather than later so I could check it out, that'd be awesome, because I know he has it, but we don't. And then I'd be interested in seeing the financial statement of the LSCP. Not that I don't trust what you guys are doing, but my concern is there's other groups like the county that has depleted funding, and for your organization's sake, I want to make sure that you guys are still, surviving in this economic climate. So those are my two concerns with moving forward, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and I hope to see you back soon with your
Great.
proposal.
And just to comment on that, yes, we do have a proposal on the table. We were very excited to see your strategic plan. It's a very ambitious plan, and we did mention that to Mike and Dennis, that there's a lot in there, and I don't know what your time frame is going to be to move that through. But we did match our proposal to meeting those objectives. And then from a financial perspective, yeah, we can certainly talk more and share information, with you on that. We're audited every year and all of that good stuff, fun stuff. But yeah, happy to clear up any questions you might have.
Okay, Amy, thank you for the presentation tonight. We appreciate the update. Hope to see you back sooner rather than later.
Hey, anytime. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Our second presentation of the evening is the Investment Advisory Board. We have Carol Johnson, who will present to us. Carol?
So I was also told there was a gentleman in the basement. That is very helpful. So, and I'm also a little vertically challenged, so I'll, if you can even see me behind this. But good evening, and thank you for allowing our group to come and give you our little annual report. I'm not sure if we have what we need to have, but we do. Okay. So I am a member of the City Investment Advisory Board. I've been on the board for approximately since 2012, and it is a very interesting board. And one of the things that I just wanted to share with you, because sometimes it's one of those things where people say, what exactly do you do? You meet, but what do you actually do? And so what we try to do is we try to look at the public funds, and we try to make sure that they're invested in a manner which will obviously provide the city with the best possible return, and ensuring maximum security while meeting, all of these other constraints like the city's cash flow. And we also have to be in conformance with the various state statutes and local ordinance with respect to investing with public funds. And so it's a very interesting group. This is the background of our 5-member board. Dan Emmendorfer is our chairperson, and we also have 2 members that are staff on the city. We have Gary Simpson, who is the chief financial officer for the city, and Mary Schleit. And both of those individuals have been enormously helpful to our group with respect to providing information to us prior to our meetings so that we can research and so that we feel as prepared as possible when we come to the meetings to make investment decisions. We do meet quarterly. And so we get together and we take a look at what the schedule looks like, what the investment needs are, what the maturity dates are for a variety of different funds, and we try to make decisions regarding those. So investment policy. Obviously, the city has to agree, and as commissioners, you try to act in accordance with Public Act 20. And so the investment policy, in fact, was adopted by the city and updated as early as December 2014. And again, one of the constraints that we have is we absolutely have to adhere to the applicable statutes, judicial decisions, and various legal opinions with respect to the instruments that we choose to invest in. One of the things that the city can be very proud of is that we do, in fact, have a very sound investment policy. In fact, we have received a national certificate and awarded a certificate of excellence by the Association of Public Treasurers of the United States and Canada in 2015. So we seem to be doing the right thing. We have spirited and sometimes lengthy discussions about what's the best thing to do. We all try to look into our crystal ball to see what is the market going to bear. Is the yield going to increase? And so this is an example of what we usually review at our quarterly meetings to try to decide what we should be doing and take a look at what our needs are, okay? Just an example. So our goals, of course, are obviously ongoing review of the investment status. We take a look at the maturity dates because timing can be an important consideration for the city with its various projects. And we also have to consider portfolio yield. Although, like I said, it's not always that attractive, I guess, if you were to look at this and compare it to your individual portfolio, because of the constraints that we have to operate under. And we also have to look at the various things that are happening with respect to the market. We also monitor and analyze our cash flow needs, and we use what we call the prudent investor standard while we're trying to meet the primary investment objectives of course, safety, liquidity, and return on investment. We do a semi-annual review also of the special assessment interest rate, and we look at that policy. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what that is, the city obviously is not in the business of lending to homeowners for special assessments. And so we're kind of looked upon as the lender of last resort. But we do have to have a policy for that, so we do review that and we set an interest rate. And so in various payment terms with respect to that as well. I guess a couple of these accomplishments that I'd like to highlight this evening, if I haven't already said it, I'd like to say that I think the staff here at the city does an absolutely wonderful job. We also continue to retain a low fiscal indicator score, which demonstrates that the city, in fact, has financial stability among all of the municipalities in the state of Michigan. So that's kudos to you. Also, each year for the past 30 years, the city has received the Certificate of Achievement in Excellence in Financial Reporting for its comprehensive annual financial report. And there's a little acronym for that, but from the Government Finance Officers Association. And then I listed what the overall portfolio yield has been in January of 2017. It isn't high if you look at that compared with what your own investments may be earning. But again, there are significant constraints with respect to public funds. So that's an interesting thing. And so I would just entertain any questions that you have, if I can.
Commissioner Cambenzi?
Well, thank you for what you do. It certainly takes someone with a certain expertise to go through all this, and I appreciate your board members as well as our staff, our city staff that serves on there. A few questions. When we do a special assessment for a street or road, are you involved in that process?
All we do is set okay, not really, Gary. We just set, if somebody has to come to the city, if we are the lender of last resort, we can tell them what the interest rate will be that we will charge. So that's basically it. So.
Okay, so if someone comes and says, we want our street paved, we don't want to wait 15 years, we're all agreeing to pay for it on our block to get a special assessment, it doesn't come. Okay. Just curious. I like that.
Thanks, but no.
Yeah. And the reason I'm asking this is I feel that I often look at risk, and when I'm making policy decisions, it's what's the risk with the taxpayer dollar. So when you say that your mission is, the city funds should be invested in a manner that provides the highest level of return, I often find myself thinking that way and wondering if it might not be your traditional role as one of our advisory boards, but perhaps just the risk and investment. I'm wondering if there's more that we could possibly gauge or get out of your group from time to time if we need it.
That's a possibility. One of the things that we do try to also do is look at the different types. If you look at that spreadsheet, we try to spread as much around as possible in terms of, balancing risk. Take a look at what, the FDIC insurance rate is in certain instances for CDs and whatnot. So there is some of that that's done, but perhaps there could be some additional things that the board could look at if people are interested.
All right, thank you.
I don't want to give us extra work, but.
Okay, Carol, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You and the members of your board, you do a good job. You have money in the bank. We do. And you win awards every year, so you're doing a good job. Thank you. Next, we come to the first public comment of the evening. Public comment is when citizens can address the commission. They can reserve time to speak on an upcoming agenda item or they can address us with whatever concerns them. Before I open public comment, I'd like to make a statement. I would like to address and remind speakers from the audience of the proper manner in which they should be addressing members of this commission. We are here to discuss the business of the city. We want an orderly and respectful dialogue between everyone here. I would ask that speakers not refer to the commissioners by first name only or last name only. The proper etiquette would be Mr. Smith, Miss Smith, or Commissioner Smith, or Mayor Smith. I would hate to have to interrupt your 3 minutes of allotted time to remind you of this. Just proper respect for this commission. Now I'm going to open public comment. Does anyone wish to address the commission? You have 3 minutes. We need your name, address, city or township. Podium in front, please.
Steve Pelto, 1900 Presque Isle. I'd like to reserve time for new business, item number 8.
Okay. Steve, we need your home address.
65 Oak Hill Drive, Marquette, Michigan.
Thank you.
Frank Javero, 350 East Ridge Street, Marquette, to speak on item 8. These are my opinions. April 10th, the Parks and Rec Chair said her board ensures that recommendations are supported by the community. How then is our public green space altered without the long requested public process? She mentioned a land use plan for Lighthouse Park. The design head told me he'd hold public hearings last February, now 2 months overdue. City management needs to expedite the process after letting us get jerked around for 8 years on account of this board's failure to add a clause to the Coast Guard agreement stipulating some reasonable time frame. The Parks Chair also mentioned the survey that was to circulate this summer, but now not until December, with an estimated completion 9 months away. In the meantime, this board rushes decisions that the survey could impact. We need a hearing once the draft survey is ready so we may fine-tune the questions. This helps prevent wording the questions to get the responses the author desires, not necessarily what our public wants. April 10th, Mr. Campana allowed a participant to speak over the 3-minute mark 3 times, the longest being 21 seconds. Mr. Campana, in fact, handled him properly. The trouble is he's selective about who he'd let speak on that long. It's all about who's who. Also on April 10th, he rushed yet another item with incomplete information. Even if it had been provided, the item warranted greater due diligence. Twice in 2 meetings, he rewarded a party who allegedly broke the law. On March 27th, the waste of $4,500 on someone who'd illegally cut public trees. And April 10th, to rush a water main in part to service a Lakeview property that was illegally clear-cut. Mr. Plord claimed that another man's and my comments in the Trollerhoff property lacked information, but we both stated our concerns clearly. If he must know, I do favor development, but only on the existing footprint, not farther back into the pristine woods, and not so imposing from the highway as a third man requested. This board threatens to blemish our main entrance and the McClellan route as well, tarnishing our visitors' first impressions of us. The County Visitor Bureau motto is "Embrace your natural identity," which this board is turning into a farce. Our members' manner of attracting the big money drives prices up and chases people away, as Ms. Compensi feared. This board's recent propensity to accelerate actions on only one rushed reading with inadequate documentation and site plans is suspicious. Unrelated people keep accusing them of rushing. Because no sensible reasons for rushing these decisions are offered, it's easy to allege that this board is receiving orders from elsewhere. For example, March 13th, Mr. Campana said, "For tonight, we want to adopt this plan," without providing any decent reason for his rush. Some people buy such hype, and others believe me, the one who urges a review of the record as to who said what and when and why.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Joe Buys, 1016 High Street,
Marquette?
Marquette.
Thank you.
I'm confused why the city is planning to spend in excess of $320,000 of our tax dollars on an unneeded roundabout at Presque Isle and Fair Avenues. I've driven through this intersection thousands of times over the years and very rarely ever saw backed up traffic. During the Builders Show this year, which generates a lot of traffic, I parked in a former church to watch the traffic. There were very few delays, including vehicles turning south off Fair. I saw one pedestrian cross the intersection. During the boat show, again with lots of traffic, I parked in the lot to observe the intersection. I saw no problems in traffic flow. I also saw no pedestrians cross the intersection. Researching accidents at this intersection, city police records show there were 2 minor fender benders in 2015 and 3 in 2016 with no injuries. Hardly justification for spending $320,000 plus on a roundabout here. Besides, a roundabout is no guarantee there won't be any fender benders. Building a roundabout here will likely use up several parking places from the now privately owned former church, not to mention Presque Isle driveway, losing the Presque Isle driveway, which will greatly hamper semi-truck deliveries. I predict the city will need eminent domain and pay compensation to take this property. Note when the hospital moves south, probably next year, traffic will be down considerably, not increased. The April 13th NMU paper, the North Wind front page line said, 3 roundabouts to slow traffic at busy intersections around campus. Ironic, as this intersection is non-NMU property. Do we really need to slow traffic down? Rumor has it NMU wants to put an NMU sign in the middle of the roundabout. Even if NMU paid for this roundabout, it's just not needed. So the bottom line here is, do we really need to spend in excess of $320,000 of our tax money for a roundabout that is not needed? What could possibly be the city's justification? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Daniel Hartman, Hartman. I am from Harbor Springs, Michigan, 587 East 3rd Street. I formerly attended Northern Michigan University and for a semester, and I went to Norway Night, way back in the day. I am here to talk about agenda item number 8, and I would like to be available for any questions anybody has. I represent Hiawatha Group, which is interested in making an offer to purchase this property. I know that we are in the early phases of this. We have been involved in about a 2-year evaluation of some student housing development for the Marquette region, and we've talked to many different members of the city and Brownfield, etc. We have hired a local architect to consult with us, and what we are really looking to do at this point is begin the process. We have submitted an offer. We understand that the process, if the city approves the sale, isn't that you're going to accept the offer as it was written. What we understand is we will be getting an appraisal, and we would begin that appraisal process. And we're prepared to do that. What I would indicate to you is that when we were evaluating different sites, the reason we ended up with the city-owned parcel is one of the target sites that we're looking at, and is very simple, and that is that we understand that you need a road built. And we understand that you can use the ability to assign the taxes to help fund and move the road, and we'd like to be the partner that helps you accomplish that, because it's been a project that I understand has been around for a while. Secondly, while this property has some desires, there has obviously been an issue of contamination, and it's been on the city books for a while. We would like to work with the proper authorities to make sure that we have a responsible development that takes into account the environmental concerns, and we comply with all rules. We'd like to be a partner and develop this property. So at this point, we're not asking for the sale. We're asking to begin the process by approving the fact that the land can be sold, so that we can then begin the process of getting an appraisal, so that we can begin the process of figuring out what the proper value is. We're familiar with the rule that requires that the property be sold within certain guidelines, and we have worked with a very, I would say, friendly group of people that are interested in seeing this develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jeff Payton on behalf of Hiawatha Group, 340 White Hills Drive, East Lansing, Michigan. I'm here tonight to answer any questions that you might have about the development that we're going to talk about to develop and then potentially the land sale. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, my name is Brian Swanson, 213 Sandstone Drive, Marquette. I'm here to voice opposition to item number 6, the lease to Superior Kayaking at the island. When I first heard about this, reading the article in the Mining Journal, I turned to the social media, Facebook, to get input. And at this point, it's about 85% against. One contributor was John Sonderegger, who has submitted an email to some of the commissioners, and he said it best. Dear Commissioners, I am writing to urge rejection for the proposed Superior Kayaking Company lease. I have reviewed the terms and can see no reason why the city taxpayers should subsidize this business. The city has 2 functioning marinas already. The slip rental and the fees at these facilities are climbing every year, yet the city is planning on providing this priceless beach location for practically nothing. Have you thought this through? I've reviewed the map and see where the proposed parking launching is proposed. This is a very small parking area and is often filled already. The launch spot is a narrow section that is congested with foot traffic already. Now we are planning on practically giving both spots away to a business so a business can make money. Can you imagine what it would cost to rent this property on a beautiful sand beach in Marquette from the private sector? This is not new ground. This scenario has played out in other communities. Please study how it has failed in areas as near as Munising. I trust you will reconsider and reject this ill-conceived idea. To me, the island is a gem of Marquette and should never go commercial. Never. Too much at risk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else?
Good evening. You're Malankian, 8 Marquette Drive here in the city of Marquette. What a pleasant community to live in. The island was open this weekend, and I had the opportunity to go all the way around it, and incredible amount of people at Sunset Point, and probably that proverbial walking path that people are using to Black Rocks and what have you. I did notice, unfortunately, that there's still people that are using the tree slings or whatever you want to call them, that they go between the 2 trees and participate, and I thought that was kind of the item that the city had discussed with Northern and other people that that action would not occur anymore. So, and being that it was such a nice day, I decided not to bother and talk to the people, and I thought maybe that was a city portion to police that, but I just wanted to mention that people are still doing that around the island between the trees and doing that. So other than that, like I said, what an incredible place to live. The power plant is going well. They're looking to fire that up shortly. I had a distinct honor and pleasure to take a look-see tour of it a week or so ago, and it's impressive that we have that particular facility being built in our community. Again, thank you for listening, and thank you again for everything you guys do.
Thank you. Would anyone else care to address the commission? Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Commissioner Baldini.
I move that we approve the consent agenda
Is
published.
Is there a second, Commissioner Reynolds?
Second.
Comments?
I just have a comment that I'd like to advise people that item 5C is the zoning ordinance regarding short-term rentals, and that item 5M is a new fire safety code. Both of these will be hearings 2 weeks from now. And 5M has raised the fees for short-term rental to $110, and for long-term rentals to $110, and raised the fee and establishes a fee of $175 for short-term rentals, and also has a $1,000 fine for non-compliance. And there's a whole lot of other verbiage in that, which we'll be discussing 2 weeks from our next meeting in 2 weeks. I just wanted to make sure that people did recognize that.
Thank you. All those in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? Carries 7-0. We have one item of unfinished business tonight. That is the lease agreement for the Superior Kayaking Company. City Clerk, could you give us the background, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. Superior Kayaking Company, LLC, has requested the City Commission consider leasing parking and beach space at Presque Isle Park. The parking and section of beach is located near the Superior Watershed Partnership offices. See attached. Staff has worked with the City Attorney and Superior Kayaking Company to draft a standard lease agreement which provides for the terms and conditions of the request. The monthly payment will be $147. The term of the lease is 5 months. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee, and Harbor Advisory Committee all reviewed and approved recommending the proposal to the City Commission. The proposed lease agreement was introduced at the Commission's April 10th, 2017 meeting and approved as recommended to move the lease agreement forward to the April 24th, 2017 meeting. Fiscal effect: the general fund will receive $735 with approval of the lease agreement. Recommendation: approve the lease agreement with Superior Kayaking Company, LLC for parking and beach space at Presque Isle Park for a period of 5 months at the rate of $147 per month, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Mr. Swanson, you did not wish to address us any further, did you? Did you care to?
No,
Your comments were just a public comment, okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Do we have a motion? Commissioner Baldini.
I will make the motion. Approve the lease agreement with the Superior Kayaking Company, LLC for parking and beach space at Presque Isle Park for a period of 5 months at the rate of $147 per month, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Plort.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Well, we discussed this at some length excuse me, I should have turned my mic on. We discussed this at some length the last meeting, and there were concerns raised about should we or should we not do this. I sensed from some of the discussion, some of the questions by our colleagues here, that this was a one-time deal for this summer, and should we try it? And should we go ahead with it from that standpoint? It's an opportunity to provide another thing for the city of Marquette. I did see the letter and the reference that we have them work out of the marina. Not so sure that that would be the best option. So I suppose we as a commission are going to have to decide whether we're going to move ahead with this and do this for this year, because it is not a long-term rental. It is a one-year rental for 5 months. So I suppose it's a little bit like the food truck thing, a little bit, let's do it, and let's look at it and see where it goes. And people raise legitimate concerns about, obviously Presque Isle, which is, people have a very proprietary sense about it for the city and for the area, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Plort?
Yeah, I also listened to a lot of people and a lot of different comments, and got a lot of comments from people who like to kayak and like the idea. Unfortunately, none of those people seem to be here tonight, but that's okay because I am, and I heard what they had to say. When we talk, it's an interesting comment that Mr. Swanson, that you make, that there should be no business on Presque Isle. I love Presque Isle. I agree. I think it's a gem of the city. And I'm well aware that most of the people who come to the city of Marquette for the first time are looking to go to Presque Isle. That's one of the things they're looking for. And Presque Isle has always been, for me and a lot of people that I know, a place to go and drive around or walk around just to be quiet or recharge or whatever. But we're already doing some business on Presque Isle, and I think it's kind of dangerous to say we don't want to do any commerce on Presque Isle when the city itself is renting the pavilion. We also have the band shell, and it seems to me like we have an ice cream business there that we can get into pretty dangerous areas if we say we're not going to do any business. We're going to use that statement for this. Now, that being said, since we are doing some business on Presque Isle, and there is a fair amount of people who are interested in having this business go, there's one more thing that I want to say. The company that's putting on or going to enter into this agreement with the city has gone through all the proper hoops. They've gone through all the different committees about Presque Isle, and they've been approved by those committees. And I have a lot of respect for those committees and what they do. They've come to the city and they've gotten the proper permits. They've done everything we've asked them to do. And like Mayor Pro Tem Baldini says, this is only a one-year thing. I personally am curious to see how it works. If it doesn't work, I think this company will be the first people to say this isn't working as we thought it would, and they will pull out. But if it does work, I think it can be a really, really nice thing for the city. That's a great area to kayak in. I have kayaked myself, so I understand what kayaking is about. Under those conditions, and having said all of that, I will support this.
Commissioner Conley.
A question for the city manager or his staff, John Swenson over there. Yeah, in response to my questions about this and my concerns 2 weeks ago, what the impression I got was that this isn't so much a rental of a space as it is a permission and allowance to operate their business, launch and use the space, but not a rental of that parking lot or that beach or anything that's exclusive. It really is just them coming to us and saying, would you agree to allow us to use public facilities?
That's correct.
Okay. And it, as Commissioner Port and Commissioner Baldini pointed out, we're trying this for a year. Since it's not exclusive, and I think it's going to provide services to city residents and our guests. I went into this 2 weeks ago like they're going to do that to my beach, but I can see going along with this now.
Commissioner Frazier.
I agree with the other commissioners. I think it's a good idea. I mean, just to try it. It's a one-year process, and it's not they're not taking up any space that, from what I understand with talking to city staff, the space is not confined only to them. You can still walk by, you can still use the space all you want, and who knows, maybe they'll find that there's enough parking for them. They'll run a shuttle from, maybe they'll park over by the playground pavilion over there, some more parking over there, and they can just shuttle people over there, you know. I mean, you look at Munising uses their national lake shore for making a lot of money. So I've been around Presque Isle, I've kayaked around Presque Isle. I've boated around there many times, take a lot of people out there, and everybody just loves it. It's a good idea just to people explore the area. As long as the kayak company, I've talked to the other committees, and they say, yep, they're into doing this very safely, operate very well. And it's a good thing for tourists, you know, people to come to town, check it out, and just see the people that don't have boats in the area want to check it out. I think it's a good idea. So as long as they're not taking up, as the property is not restricted to only their use, which I understand is the way Mike said, it's not restricted just to their use. Other people can still walk by, people can still park there. So if they're running parking spots, they'll go park somewhere else. So I think it's a good idea.
Commissioner Cambenzi.
Well, this, I guess most of the controversy got brought up to me right before this meeting, and I did have a chance to go on Facebook and look at the comments, and I think some of them are very well validated, and I'd like to thank Mr. Swanson for coming. One thing we don't have in place in Marquette with all the lakeshore that's publicly owned is any sort of long-term plan for it. We have another lease in place right now. We lease to the rowing club. People don't seem to mind the boats on the beach, but when it turned into putting a facility down there, you saw what happened in our community. It was very divided. And so I think those people that are speaking on Facebook here didn't come here tonight but wanted their voices heard. I think they have a valid concern, because one of the things that all of us in Marquette love more than anything and take pride in is how we have preserved the lakeshore and the lakefront for the public. You don't see that anywhere else in Michigan. And so I appreciate those people who have come here to be very protective of it. Because this did go through our committee, I'm willing to be okay with it for a year. But what I would like to see happen before we get more of these, we already had another person come up and say that they wanted to do the same thing. So I think the concern and what I think would be best for the city is to look at what is our long-term vision? What is enough? How many? And I think we need that input from community members, not just the businesses that want to come in here and utilize our beach. So I will be okay with this for this year, but I do agree that there is valid concerns with where we put that and how much. We have erosion problems. We have the use of Presque Isle right now is seeing a huge increase, and we're well aware of that. We're looking at ways that we need to mitigate foot traffic on the island. There are things going on, I think, that has put Presque Isle in a spotlight, and certainly I feel like the community is trying to balance what is preserving that and what is giving that up for use, or what use do we want there. So I think there are a lot of questions. I will go through with this for this year, but I really think that how this is going to happen, it's not going to happen from me. Usually in the minority saying that we need a long-term plan for our lakeshore, but I really think this needs to be driven by our community, and I think there are enough people out there that want to bring this up and come forward and say, you know, let's look at the long-term planning. So I would hope that that gets passed on through our staff back to the Presque Isle Park Committee as well as our Parks and Rec Committee. People are much more active. They're using our parks more, but Presque Isle is a gem and has a lot of sandstone and erosion problems as well as a lot of traffic. So I'd like to thank Mr. Swanson for coming here, voicing those concerns. You are heard, and I'd like to see us look at a long-term plan before we get here next year and continue to either pass a lease agreement like this or allow more to happen. So thank you.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Just a quick comment and then a question. I tend to agree with Commissioner Kimbenzi, and that's, as we have an item further along, number 8, same kind of concern, long-term planning. I do have a question. I apologize for not being at the last meeting, and maybe this question was brought up, but how did we arrive at the price of $735?
Well, we don't have precedent, or we didn't have precedent for setting the fee, so we used the fee rate or the rate schedule that we used for the rowing club. We considered it similar, even though this is private as opposed to the rowing club being a nonprofit, but we think after we went through it a year and if it was successful and we were going to come back, we'd have a new fee schedule in the budget by then.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Baldini.
I just have a comment is, it didn't make the motion lightly, but I recall from last week and reading again for this one that 3 of our committees said yes to it. And we really turned to them and they said, let's go ahead with it. And that was probably one of the motivators for me, at least, to say, okay, let's try it for a year. And I'm quite sure they will comment to us if they don't think it's working. They aren't shy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swanson, I do thank you for coming and expressing your views. I mean, we need to hear both sides of the issue. I actually wish there was more people, perhaps, with your views. although I think, I know I'm going to vote for this. The reason I'm going to vote for it is because, as was stated by everybody here, it's gone through 3 committees. It's been looked at very closely. It's a fairly minimal project. I mean, it's not going to leave a big footprint there. It's not exclusive. Anybody can walk across wherever they are. Parking is, they can park wherever they want. This just gives them, nobody can tell them to get out of there. So that's why that's what they're paying for. It's an area that's highly used right now by kayakers, so it's obviously a desirable area. You got surfers that use it, so it's just a really pretty area. And they are going to do safe kayaking, and that's important too. I would love to see this business take off and multiply and get so big that we have to kick them out of there. Let's hope that this happens to them, and again, we'll know by next year. It's a 1-year lease. We can change it next year, so it's kind of, it's a small operation, a small startup. Let's wait and see what they do. Commissioner Frazier, you had a question?
Just one more quick comment is I've voted on the area, like I said, many times, and I thank all of our advisory committees for giving us advice and approving this, because they're the ones we have to listen to. They're responsible for giving their advice and looking over this stuff. So they've got this company gone through all the hoops. I see why they're looking at that area to launch from, because knowing that area, that's a very pretty section. To launch from the marina would be very difficult to roll all the way around the ore dock. The other beach they could possibly use would be the one right next to the break wall. I've hiked that before when we had ice. We didn't have any ice this year, but I've hiked that before, and that's where a lot of the cool art landscaping is around there. So I can see why they wanted to launch that area. And it's safe from the weather. You get weather on the other side by the break wall, but I can see why maybe next year, if it goes through, they'll decide they want to move to the other beach, because that's where most people want to see that other area. Who knows? But hopefully it's a 1-year plan. We'll see how it goes after 1 year.
Thank you. Commissioner Cambenzi.
Can I ask Mr. Swenson, what other areas were looked at, or were other parks looked at? Or I guess I'm thinking of the old Hot Pond even, something that has a parking lot that's separate that doesn't see swimmers, but could possibly be used for that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Harbor Advisory Committee really looked at this from a water perspective and a water safety perspective, as well as PIPAC. And the biggest issue with traversing that way around was a lot of times the water on this side of the break wall there can be fairly calm, and once you turn that corner it can be fairly rough. So from a safety perspective, it was advised that it be somewhere from the pavilion side of the island. So before you go out, you know what the conditions are going to be like. So that was the reason behind that.
Commissioner Conley.
I'd like to echo that. I kayak. I launch from this place every season, several times. It's particularly safe because you can launch there even with a northeast wind. You can get out, and the conditions gradually get worse until you decide, I need to turn around. And there's still a margin of safety to turn around and get back to shore. If you go around the end of the break wall, you're going to be washing up on the rocks. By the time you get that boat turned around, you're broadside to the waves, you're done. Call the Coast Guard. So this is the best place to launch if you're going to launch in Presque Isle. I know we have a kayak launching facility at Clark Park, but the same problem. If you go out into the lake, you're going to be presented by a north, or maybe even worse, a northeast wind, and you're going to get hammered back, hopefully back on the beach, and not get out to the break wall. So I think this is the place to launch kayaks and to set up a place for our guests who don't know the waters like we do to launch from as well.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call the question. All those in favor, say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. We have 3 items on new business. The first item is the purchase of property from Massick Properties, LLC. City Clerk, can we have the background on that, please?
Yes. Thank you, sir. At its meeting on August 8th, 2016, the City Commission approved the 6-year capital improvements plan for 2017 to 2022, which included a Wright Street reconstruction project. The Wright Street reconstruction project proposal includes upgrading the intersection of Wright Street and Lincoln Avenue to a roundabout as recommended in the Lundin Truck Corridor Study. In order to construct the roundabout at this location, additional right-of-way must be acquired by the city. As a result, city staff has reached an agreement with Massick Properties LLC at 1202 Wright Street for the purchase of the needed right-of-way property, and the city attorney has prepared the attached purchase agreement for commission approval. Fiscal effect: an agreed-upon cash payment of $5,292.54 will be made and funded through the Lundin Road funding. Recommendation: approve the purchase of additional right-of-way property owned by Massick Properties LLC per the terms of the purchase agreement. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Commissioners, do we have a motion? Commissioner Plort.
I move that we approve the purchase of additional right-of-way property owned by Massick Properties LLC per the terms of the purchase agreement.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Frazier.
Second.
Discussion?
This is a continuation of a process. I can't tell you how many people have stopped me and said we need a roundabout at Lincoln and Wright. It's just astonishing how many, and these are people that didn't like the roundabout that we originally put in earlier on, and all of a sudden they like roundabouts, and they say this is the place we need to have a roundabout. I agree, and so this is again just a continuation of the process to make that happen.
Commissioner Frazier, anything?
I agree with Commissioner Plort because we got a lot of traffic there now between the city truck traffic, between the mining traffic, and it's just a busy street. So I think it's a good idea just to help control traffic a little bit instead of people sitting at a stop sign forever. So,
thank you. Okay, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? That also carries 7-0. Come to our second item. It's a request to purchase city-owned property at Cliffs Dow site. City Clerk, background, please.
Thank you, sir. The city has received an offer to purchase approximately 10 acres of city-owned property located on a portion of the former Cliffs Dow site. Please see attached for an analysis from the Community Development Director that provides information compiled from city plans, codes, and also includes input from other departments. A draft resolution is provided that addresses the provisions found in Section 2-2506 of the Marquette City Code. Should the commission adopt the provided resolution, the city manager would direct a sale of the property in accordance with the conditions provided and present a final product to the city commission in the form of a resolution of authorizing the sale of the property. Fiscal effect: as presented, the city would realize $120,000 for the sale of the property, with the possible future income realization of $105,000 for additional property per the offer. However, per the city code, the property cannot be sold for less than 80% of the appraised value, and the property will need to be appraised in order to determine viable fiscal effect. Recommendation: adopt the resolution of intent to sell property and permit the city manager to direct the sale of the property in accordance with the city code. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you. We had a few people that wish to address this item. Mr. Pelto, I believe you were first.
Thank you.
3 minutes, 3 minutes, Steve.
Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners, Steve Pelto, 65 Oak Hill Drive, Marquette, Michigan. I own the property adjacent to the city site that Hiawatha Group wants to acquire. For the record, I'm in favor of development and development of the Cliffdale site, but for the right project. However, is there a need for more apartments? Right now, on the books, within the next month to next year, there's going to be 154 units. The old orphanage, 54 units. Founders Landing, 64 units. Viridia Group that you just approved the water and sewer extension, 36 units at a start. 154 units coming on within the next 1 year. Sugarloaf is also looking at 300 beds. NMU has had a decreasing student population. We all hope this changes. Plus, NMU is in the process of building state-of-the-art dorms right now for their students. I've been in the management business for over 40 years. I've seen the highs, I've seen the lows. We own or manage over 150 units in the city. It's become harder and harder to rent in the past few years. Last year, we had all of our places rented, except for two. One was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home on Fitch Street. We had it rented in the years before for $1,400 a month. We didn't rent it August 1st. We didn't rent it September 1st, December 1st. We lowered our price to $1,200. Finally, February 15th, at $1,000 a month, we rented it. That's a $400 decrease, 6.5 months without any rent coming in for a house. We also manage a very nice apartment building over on Ridge Street. $800 a month. It's a large 1,200 square foot building. 2-bedroom, 2-bath, $800 a month. July 1st, $800. Kept trying. Finally, March 3rd, $750 we rented it for. At the $800, it was plus electric heat. At $750, it was including heat. That's what's happening out there in the market right now today. I asked the commission to take a hard look at how this will affect other apartments in the city of Marquette. If apartments go vacant or we are forced to lower rates, the value of these buildings will decrease and taxes that we pay to the city will be lower. We may have, instead of a dark store situation as the township has, a dark apartment building situation in the city of Marquette. Please don't rush into this. Look at what is best for our city. Those who have spent money, not only on their apartments, but also improving their apartments, and wanting what's best for the city and what's best for the city of Marquette. I thank you. Is there any questions?
Thank you. If we have some, we'll bring you back up.
Thank you.
Mr. Verito, you wish to address us?
Frank Javerito, these are my opinions. Here's another surprise out of the clear blue. Why is NMU considering additional housing on top of the massive dorm complex they've just built and the high density on the A-frame site proposed when the enrollment is steadily declining? The 10-acre parcel extends too far east such that we need to first determine realignment of Lakeshore Boulevard and how the university's plans fit in with our plans for an adjacent park. We may need part, if not all of that parcel for all we know at this juncture. For example, we may need the east part of that parcel for a buffer zone. This is yet another alleged case of placing a cart before the horse, similar to building a brand new hospital before we have any idea how the current campus will be repurposed, or committing to the water main layout at Trollerhof, having just seen a conceptual drawing for the first time, and allowing no public comment based upon that drawing. History doesn't take too long to repeat itself. Twice in 2 meetings now, the commission has pulled this game on us, and there's reason to believe they'll rush to another premature decision, having provided no depiction of the proposed buildings. Also, whoever heard of selling prime lakefront property for $1,200 per acre? Information in the agenda supplement states that this is in line with the sale price of the Clark Park property, which is to compare apples with automobiles. Clark Park serves a public purpose, while NMU intends to construct a high-density complex for profit, in effect cordoning off the majority of this parcel from public use. The situation is compounded by the fact that an influential faculty member serves on this board. Even if he recuses himself from voting, as he should, his presence is sure to influence the rest, an undeniable pattern that we've observed over the years on various items, including the contentious Citadel Tower and the Rowers Boathouse. Before deciding, let us first determine the realignment of the boulevard and how that interacts with the public desire to develop a showcase park at Cliffs Dow. Additionally, let's see the proposed layout for what amounts to a huge development consisting of between 240 and 340 housing units overlooking our lakeshore and proposed park. We have every reason to believe that this board will rush yet another decision on an important parcel without adequate public notice or process. It's become clear that site plans are no longer needed because members decide based on who's who. Any rush by the commission to approve this on a single reading with incomplete documentation will only bolster public suspicion. This parcel is too critical to place another cart before the horse over. Regardless of the validity of the public sentiment, it's feared that the prevailing politics will dictate the decision as usual, not the ideal land use for a given parcel of land.
Mr. Hartman, you wish to address us?
Well, first I would appreciate the opportunity just respond to a few things. I'm not here to debate, but I do want to note that the resolution, as I understand it, will allow us to go forward with an appraisal for the purchase price. Prior to there's any development, we have to talk to the DEQ and resolve the environmental issues that are there and make sure that we have a plan in place with them in order to get the deed restriction removed. So we can't even engage in that process until we do this. And while we understand very clearly that the city wants to develop a park and move the roadway, the funding source for doing that would be the taxes that would be attributed from this. We have not asked for any TIF credits or anything with this project, so we'd be taxed at the full rate with our project. There was also a miscomment. It is $12,000 an acre, not $1,200 an acre. And then the last thing I guess I'd like to point out is that we have looked at the market economics. We're big boys in business, and we think this is something that will benefit. We are not associated with the university at all. It is intended for student housing, and while the dormitory project is necessary, I was in Payne Hall many years ago, and it appears to be much the same. So I'm glad they're redoing that. This housing would be for seniors, and it would also stop people from renting throughout the community, because I am a father with small children, and I would not want a college atmosphere in the house next to me. And I understand that it'll help protect some of your communities by putting the students in the 3rd Street corridor where you want them to be active in the business and in the sporting and events. We want to make this a nice project. We want to be partners with the city. And believe me, there's a long process. There has to be rezoning. We'll have to go through multiple committees prior to ever having ground broken. This is just to begin the engaged discussion. Thank you. I'm open for any questions, too, if anybody has any.
Thank you. Mr. Baden, did you wish to address us, or you just want to be available?
Just a couple other points. One of the things in our evaluation of the site that we've looked at, and I've actually worked on this site for almost 3 years now, we think that there's a need up there potentially for some senior housing just to the north of there, and that's why we put that other land on option. And we think it's a beautiful setting out there that would give you just unbelievable views in the summer and winter times. So that was one of the other things that we wanted to talk with you a little bit about, is that it would be a combination of student housing. There would be some storage facility in there so you can store your cars because of the snow loads, and then also some senior housing to the north. Any questions if you guys have any?
Thank you. We'll call you if we need you. Okay, Commissioner Baldini.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we suspend the rules.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Conley seconds that. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay. Commissioner Baldini.
I just think, first of all, by charter, the city manager is obligated to bring any proposal for a purchase of property to us, just so we understand this, okay? But by that, and that's fine. But I do think I probably, with my colleagues, have some questions, and what this proposal, this motion does, is it doesn't sell the property. It authorizes the city manager to enter into some discussions. But I have some concerns, questions. First, how big is that piece of property? I think it's 40 acres, is it not? Dennis?
Thank you, Commissioner. The remainder of the Dow property is approximately 33 acres, plus or minus, and this request is for 10.
Okay, with the 10, then there'll be 33 left, or with the 10 plus the 7?
No, with the 10, there would be approximately 23 acres left.
Left, okay. I suppose the question I have, and I don't have the answer, is would this project, is this the best utilization of this property with this project? Have we thought of, as a city, of doing an RFP, and that would obligate us to certain finances and other costs? I don't know those answers. I don't know if we've looked at that. By selling 10 acres, let's say that's where we go, and I do feel that the price is very, very low. But if we sold the 10 and there's an option for 7, we then have 23 other acres that a project would have to find a way to fit in with that. And maybe that's what we're going to have to do. But I'm not sure if we're doing this in a fashion that gives us the best way to look at it. We are going to have to do an appraisal, which we haven't had done on that property. We did have some property that was donated, and that had an appraisal property further down. But so I suppose I'm here looking to see what my colleagues have to say and to see where we might go with this, because I think there are other opportunities maybe with this land.
Thank you. Commissioner Conley? Well, I'm not opposed to selling this land and having it developed, so my comments are not in that direction. I want to see it sold, developed, and put to use. But this is a first offer. It's an unsolicited offer, and it's not generally been known to be out for sale. So we don't know what else could happen there. And it is, in this case, we aren't deciding about what happens with a private property or zoning or this or that. This is our property, and we can sell it entirely on our terms or not. And we can set it at whatever value we think it's appropriate, but we should not sell ourselves short. We certainly need an appraisal. I also want to see an accounting for what we've put into this site, the entire site, and then this particular 10-acre tract of land that we're talking about. Then I agree with Pro Tem Baldini. What we need is an RFP, a request for proposals. Let it out there for several months, and then evaluate the responses, and evaluate them in terms of the best overall yield for the city and the taxpayers of Marquette. Yield in terms of price that we would accept for that property, and yield in terms of the taxable value that we see down the road. Mini storage or self-storage is not going to generate the kind of taxes that this city needs to move forward. And we can say, no, we're not going to sell you that for that purpose. That can be part of our request. We can then require, as part of our request for proposal, that the successful proposal then will have to enter into the developer's agreement that will tell us, when does the project start? When does the project end? Because we don't want to have it sitting out there for 10 years. Let it go for $100,000 and then watch it appreciate over 10 years, and we can't do anything about it. It's not ours anymore. It's private land. And we know that we can't tell private developers what to do. But if we sell it to it, we can restrict the sale to say, you must start by this time, you must finish by this time. We need an accumulated value on this and taxes. And also, we need to make sure, we need to restrict this so it doesn't revert to a non-taxable entity. So we have this many hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars worth of land in the Cliff Dow site. It's getting ready to be for sale. And all of a sudden, somebody flips it to Northern. No taxes. We get nothing out of it, and we've put in a lot of money. So we have to put it in terms of what's best for the city. Sale price, yield down the road, and have assurances as part of our developer's agreement that says, we will do this, we will assure it, we bond it, we have it backed by a bank, we have this, we have that, you will get your money. And we can restrict it or not sell it under those terms. We also need to be thinking of such a method for selling pieces of the Heartwood. We can't just give it to the first offer. We have to set it out for an RFP, set out an RFP, get back the proposals, and evaluate, okay, what's the price? What will it do for us? And what can't you do with it in the future that would be detrimental to the future of the city? Now, as for regulating the apartment market, that really is not the role of any governmental unit. That's anti-competitive. We have to let that operate. So that isn't the reason. But we do have an interest in the city. We put a lot of time, effort, and money into this, and we need the revenue, and we need the purchase price. So we're not ready to, I'm not ready to accept this offer, and I will vote against this proposal. I will propose that we use the RFP mechanism in a motion. Well, we don't even have a motion yet, do we? Okay, we're just out and discussing. Well, I intend, if it's the consensus of the rest of the commission, to move to direct the city manager to offer an RFP to bring back to the city commission for its review before we put it out there. This is policy. This isn't operations. This is the policy of the city of Marquette, and will move forward to the Heartwood. So I think we need to develop this idea, have the manager bring it back to us. I'm not in a hurry. I'd like the money. Of course, I'd like to sell it for $20 million like tomorrow. But I know that's not going to happen with a guaranteed taxable income of $20 million a year. But I'm realistic. But we need a reasonable time for that RFP to sit out there, bring it back, and look at the proposals, compare them, and then see how that fits into our overall plan.
I would like to ask Commissioner Conley a question.
Sure.
Would you be in favor of just starting with an appraisal and just get that?
Yes,
Or-
that was part of my comments.
Well, I mean,
let's
that's
get that appraisal
kind of
first.
what we're doing tonight is.
No, we're authorizing
Well, what if-
furthering negotiations, and I
Okay.
don't want that.
Okay, well, what if we cut it off at appraisal only?
Well, then what do you do?
Then you got an appraisal. I mean, it's nice to know.
You got an appraisal. Well, but
Then you can start.
let's keep moving forward. Appraisal, and at the same time have our city manager develop an RFP that we can come back and consider. Why not do two things at once? Because we're not going to do some appraisal companies are going to do the appraisal.
Well, okay, first let me go to Commissioner Frazier.
I agree with the other commissioners. I think it's a good idea. I mean, right now, all we have out there in that acre, I think they're looking at is just the storage facility, but just dumpsters for garbage drop off. So it's not a very pretty area. I think that's part of the area they're looking at. But I agree with having development out there. I mean, there's a hotel they've been talking about up in the township building that they can't get approval to build. Be a great place to do it. But I think this is, from what I understand, from talking to the city manager, this is not to sell the property. I hope people don't think we're selling the property. It's just to start negotiations, just like you're trying to sell a house. If you're working with a real estate agent and they get a bid for something, you decide whether or not to go through with it or not. This is just a negotiation, if I understand correctly. Just negotiations. He's going to start negotiations, get an appraisal, see what it's worth, and see if it's a fair offer or not. And then once he's done doing all the paperwork, because Ron loves paperwork, we all know that, he'll come back to us and say, okay, here is the offer this company's making. Do you want to sell it? Yes or no? Here's their appraisal value. Here's what it's worth. Here's the sale value. Yes or no? And I think he'll come back to us eventually. It's just for him to start the paperwork and just see what happens. Then I agree with Mr. Conley. Throw it on the market. I asked, the manager, if we put this in the market, they said no. So why not throw it on the market and just see what happens? We'll see. It's an appraisal process. See what happens. See if somebody bites on it. Just see what happens. I agree with just starting the process, not sell it. Just start the process.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds.
Well, this is, I feel like, the first time, thank you, Commissioner Conley, for expressing everything that I wanted to say, and I don't have to go forward and say it because you did such a wonderful job. But with that, the only follow-up comment I have is that my largest issue when seeing this, it was not that we were going to be selling this land, which is, I think, all of our intentions and all of those things, but I have no idea what I personally, as a commissioner or a member of the public, what I want to happen with that land, and I don't think the public has any idea what they'd like to see happen with that land. I don't know if it's housing, I don't know what it is, and I don't think anybody knew that this option was even out there. So I don't think that there's been enough public input what we should be doing with this land, including, this is the first time I've heard of it, was Thursday. So that's one of my issues, along with all the other issues. We don't know value, we don't know what we want to do, so I will also be voting no.
Commissioner Plard.
I have some questions for public comment. First of all, for Mr. Verito. Your opinion, Mr. Verito, is it your feeling that we shouldn't sell this property at all?
Take the stand, please.
And I mean this sincerely. I'm just curious as to what your
Of course.
your feeling is on the
Well,
property.
my main concern was the eastern portion of the property and how that would interrelate with the realignment of Lakeshore Boulevard and all those visuals. So I think I'd be in favor of maybe something way off on maybe the west half or so of it, but again, we have too much incomplete information.
Well, but you're not totally against selling the property.
Not the western part of it.
Okay.
It all depends how the Lakeshore Boulevard alignment comes out and the visuals associated with that.
That's a good point. Lakeshore Boulevard is a good point. Okay, thank you. Mr. Pelto, I have a question for you. Are you interested in any way purchasing this property?
Not at this time, no.
Do you think in the future you might be?
There might be an interest, yes.
Okay, but as it stands right now, you have
As
no
of right now, no. It does adjoin my property. The dump site has been behind me for 8 or 10 years. I look forward to it opening.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I should say, for my part, I agree. I think, this is going to take a lot of time to do. I agree with Commissioner Reynolds when she says that the public may not have even thought about this issue at this point right now. But I think it's fair to clarify also that, this is the first step. And I think that Hiawatha Group has something coming for them because they're the ones that brought the idea up. And they're the ones, as has been mentioned, this offer has come to us unsolicited. Somebody has looked at the property and said, I think we could do something with this. We've got some solid ideas. And I think that there's some validity to that. But I also think that we absolutely need to find out what the property is worth. What we can bring to the city. I also agree with Commissioner Conley. He said a lot of things that I have on my mind that I agree with. I would, if the commission wants to start the process, and again, it needs to be made clear, this is only the beginning of the process. So for those of us or those people who think we're moving too fast, please let me explain to you, this is step one. This is where we start. If we approve this as it's written on the agenda, then that's what we're doing is starting the process and getting the city and people involved with where are we with this and what's really going to happen. I would also be in favor of tabling this for the next meeting. I would agree to do that and give the public an opportunity to review it, comment on it, get with us, let us know what they want or what they don't want to do. And so that's pretty much where I stand right now. We certainly need to know exactly what this property is worth, and I also would like to know what it might be worth 10 years from now, but it's a difficult projection to make. But what do we get? In other words, basically, what's in it for the city of Marquette? Thank you.
Commissioner Cambenzi.
I guess my thought when I saw this come on here is that I was involved back in the planning commission when we made this a mixed use property. We went through and determined what is the best use of this. Now this was 2008 about. To my knowledge, we haven't really come forward to the public to say what we'd like to do except for where we would like to put the road. So I think, yes, we owe the public its due diligence with this property. However, we still aren't determined, I guess, how much of this, I guess, we want to look at developing and for what use. Do we wait until we get the final clearance on all of the parcels to look at it as one piece? Do we kind of piecemeal it as we get the okay, through the DEQ? I mean, what do we want to do? And I would say that a lot of these decisions really right now rest with staff and certainly still our planning commission in terms of bringing this forward to the public. They're the body that is going to bring it forward to ask our community, what do you want to do with this parcel of land? And so I appreciate that this was brought forward. As Mayor Pro Tem Baldini stated, it is the city manager's responsibility to bring forward anything that comes to the city for purchase. I would like to thank the developers certainly for bringing their ideas forward, the offer of the purchase of this land. However, I have a lot of concerns with the market and the saturation of all of the apartment buildings being built right now. I don't think it's in the city's best favor to go ahead and allow more of that with what's going on in the private market. So as much as I don't like the city to be involved in economic development and controlling the market, I do think Mr. Pelto brings up some very valid concerns. I guess I would like to have any type of report from the manager or staff on next steps for this property. We know in terms of what came back to us when we looked at the Dow site with the MDEQ report and our environmental lawyer who gave us a presentation, but what are future steps and possibly what's a timeline to look at this property?
I can answer that partially, and Dennis can help me a little bit, but it was not our intent to market it soon. We were waiting for the environmental remediation to move ahead a little bit further before we thought it to be a more attractive property for sale. And I think, Dennis, that's fair, or?
Yes, I agree with the city manager. Plus, the partnership just commended us on our strategic plan, and this is not part of it. The Heartwood property was first, so, I think in order to prioritize things to take advantage of our staff, which is operating at maximum bandwidth, we really need to take a hard look at that and do some prioritization as well.
Commissioner Conley?
City Manager, your comments about this property, were you talking about this 10-acre tract or the entire Cliff Dow
The
property?
entire Cliffs Dow. I mean, we've been concentrating on the Heartwood property as a priority over Cliffs Dow, and Cliffs Dow has been lower on the list, but because of this opportunity, you're speaking about it today.
I would be, if we have a consensus with those comments in mind, then if we were going to move forward, I wanted the RFP. But if we want to put this on the back burner and let this cook a little bit more and bring it back later, that's fine with me too. This proposal I'm opposed to, as it is. If the priority is more the Heartwood, getting that assessed and moving forward with selling that, I would ask, just as a matter of comment, that we do an RFP in the same manner that I spoke of a few minutes ago. But I would allow this then to die by inaction rather than anything if that's the consensus and that's the intent of the city manager and staff. Pro Tem Baldini, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you're probably right on this, Commissioner Conley, that first I want to thank the Hiawatha Group. I mean, we do have a proposal out there, and communities in the UP would be dying to have proposals. And but having listened to the city manager, and we all know what the discussion on the Heartland property, which we've owned for a number of years, because I was going to move that we ask him to come forth with an RFP for this piece of property. But I think I would like to, I think you're right, if we do nothing, it dies. But I think we probably should have a discussion about this, not this evening probably, but maybe soon, about how do we do this. The Heartland property, I think, is something that we've all focused on, but also we have somebody who's come forth and made an offer. We know there's a bunch of developers out there looking to do things in Marquette, and I don't want to stifle that, okay? I don't think any of us do. We're thrilled with it. So maybe taking no action kills it this time, but maybe 2 weeks from now, we have a work session led by the city manager and the planning division about how do we proceed with an RFP for the Heartland property and the Cliff Dow property. And maybe we could just postpone this for 2 weeks, or is that not what we want to do?
Why don't you just give me a little I'll be happy to set that up, but just don't set a timetable on it. That would be helpful.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, we are, there's a similar situation simmering with the Heartwood right now, and you know, we're waiting for that to see what happens. But right now we have RFPs in progress for appraisals of the Heartwood property, so we're a step ahead there. And I guess I'd like to go through that procedure first, and then as we get closer to actually having the Cliffs Dow as long as you're thinking along these lines, to have the Cliff Dow as when it reaches that level of priority with staff, we'd be happy to do that.
For example, I don't know what it would mean to develop an RFP on the Cliff Dow property, because we have a lot of environmental issues there. The Heartland property, we have no environmental issues. That, I suspect, is a development. We have property, here it is, okay? And which would be a much simpler, I'm oversimplifying. But the Cliff property would require some other heavy lifting on our part. But I don't want to thwart people approaching us about the possibility of using that property, because we know that some of the remediation has been there, and we've actually remediated some of that property, and we think it is ready for sale, could be used. So does anybody have any brilliant suggestion?
Commissioner Conley.
Well, my idea of an RFP on this property was more to redirect this proposal that's on the table. I think it's clear that this commission doesn't want this as the only proposal to move forward on, that we want an RFP. I'm going to guess, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, I'll speak for myself. I want to see an RFP process on the Heartwood. I know there's been an offer, but I want to see that put out there, and I want to see different proposals come in, compare them again. I want total yield. I want purchase price and taxable value. I want site plans. I want timelines. I want assurances. And in this case, it probably would not go to a non-taxing entity, but things like that. And if my fellow commissioners agree, and maybe we do need a work session to lay this out a little bit further, no pressure. But I think that at some point we need to sit down and say to you, the RFP method is the way to sell large tracts of city land.
Okay, we got to keep this confined now to the Cliff Dow property. We got to settle that item. So, I mean, again, I still feel that this whole item was just to whether or not we start the process. Step one, will we have an appraisal? I get the feeling nobody wants to do that. So before we make a motion, we have to either postpone or make a different motion. I don't think this motion is going to pass as is. Commissioner Baldini, what do you have?
I would like to move, that we postpone this matter for the next 2 or 3 months, Mr. Manager? 3 months? Okay, that we postpone this matter for 3 months, and that he come back to us with a plan for an RFP for the Heartland project property and a recommendation on what we do with the Cliff Dow property.
Commissioner Cambenzi, do you have a second? You have your finger. Tell me what you want to say.
I don't have a second. My idea was to kind of take note of what the city manager is trying, I guess, nicely to say, and that is that there's a lot of work on the table right now. I think the best decision would probably be to put this parcel of land back to the Planning Commission, to actually look at best use of the property. And I think in the meantime, as we work through the Heartwood Forest property, I think we'll come up with how to tackle this. But I think we're so far away from coming back to this even in 3 months. And being on the Planning Commission, I guess I just want to put my 2 cents in that This is a big, big project.
We still need a second. Would that be Commissioner Conley?
I'll second Mayor Pro Tem Baldini's motion.
Further comments? Any?
I just, it's a mechanism with a lot of latitude in there for the city manager, and I think it would, if he comes back to us and says, in 3 months, I think this should go to the planning commission, then I think that's where we're gonna go, but I think he understands Commissioner Conley's point about the Heartland property and our concern about how do we manage this piece of property.
Commissioner Reynolds.
Driving me bananas with Heartland. It's Heartwood. Just FYI.
Heartwood, I'm sorry. It's close to our heart.
I don't disagree with your motion, but I do think we're putting two things together when Dave did bring up the point that this is just the Cliffs Dow, and we're saying Heartland and Cliffs Dow, and now we're saying 3 months. The reason I will vote no on this is I'm more on to just say work session maybe, and then we'd make determinations of how we should work this. I feel like we're at the DS trying to make a decision here, and none of us really know where to go, and I'm more on Sarah's just dealing with Cliffs Dow and planning department, so that's why I will vote no on your motion.
Commissioner Conley?
Question for our city attorney. Just because it says this proposal is on the agenda, can we also talk about the Heartwood, or do we have to confine our comments to this agenda item?
Well, there's a little bit of latitude, but we typically, I mean, I understand the spirit of what Mr. Baldini is saying, but I typically would want to confine it to this particular agenda item because we haven't really given notice to the public with respect to the other parcel. But having said that, this is such a general motion. I mean, to look at, consider maybe RFPs 3 months or 4 months from now, you could probably do that. I'm not sure exactly what the motion is. I think it's to postpone consideration of this matter for up to 3 months, and then something followed that. I didn't get it, but if you wanted to, in the meantime, ask the city attorney or city manager to do the same thing with the Hartwood property, you'd accomplish that same goal.
Could we not keep it to the Cliff Doll property tonight?
Then can we have a second motion afterwards? I mean, is there any restriction for a motion?
No, there's no restriction.
Following this, that
there's
we
no
can't
restriction.
have
like
a
I
similar
said,
motion for
it's
Hartwood?
a fairly benign motion anyway.
Okay. Comment. The city manager has asked for additional time to even prepare for a work session, and that's why I agreed with Pro Tem Baldini's 3-month timeline rather than a work session within the next couple of weeks. I'm not in a rush. I want to do this right and not fast.
Commissioner Frazier.
How about making addition to the motion saying, like Commissioner Benzie said, how about letting the planning commission work on it the next 2 or 3 months, let them figure it out, so the best decision to do with the Cliffsdale site, and then come back to us either after work session or whatever, and figure out what the best decision would be. So I'd second the motion on the Cliffsdale property to forward, in addition to it, maybe let the planning commission work on this to see what the best decision going forward would be for it.
Commissioner Cambenzi?
I guess to maybe gain a little more support for how I feel on this, there's one other valuable asset in our audience we haven't tapped yet, and that's Sherry Davey, who is in charge of the brownfield for this site, which is another incredibly time-consuming process. So if I could ask her a question on, even if we look at RFPs, are we anywhere near, could we be ready in 3 months to even consider brownfield
Sherry, could you take the podium, please?
stuff?
I think the position of the brownfield would be to move, obviously we'd be looking at the state funding as well. So if it came before the Brownfield Authority, I think we would be getting things into place to work with the state, work with the Brownfield Plan and the Act 381. So, 3 months, certainly we could use that time. I guess looking at the other perspective of, and what I look at as someone, you know, who values this area too, but the lake shore. You know, when thinking about what can be done with Cliffstown, and looking at how we can access those funds when there isn't money available from other directions to do the lakeshore. I guess that's kind of the appeal that this has. And I think, you know, the Brownfield Authority would be listening with all ears on this. They've met with these individuals. The plan was brought forward early on, but with a recognition that the land, you know, wasn't available to be sold yet. So I think, you know, the board stands by with a lot of interest, but looking at what happens beyond that, and I guess coming back to even the federal and state component of it, the idea that when that property was sold many years ago by the city, that there wouldn't be state and federal funds that were going to be available to help develop that property. So looking at the investors who come in, that's going to be another venue, you know, to help develop it. And this has been our first, you know, awareness of interest in the property. And, you know, I think it's a really interesting idea. So I think the board would certainly be interested and willing to look at that.
Is 3 months, is that a quick time frame? It seems quick to me if we want to do it right and kind of.
I think that's a comfortable time frame. You know, there are lots of things that we would be working on simultaneously. I guess it would be a matter of the time frame of the project, you know, and who ultimately ends up with the project. And we know right now that in the city it's a little difficult to find work resources. It's very, very busy, but I guess that would be another consideration. But I think 3 months is comfortable.
I guess I'm going to yield to our city manager, and if he feels 3 months is enough time, fine. If we're just kind of setting 3 months and we're still going to be pushing it off, I guess I would like to wait.
I may have spoken a little bit too quickly, Commissioner Baldini. I agreed to the 3 months, but I think in reality, direction in the direction of at least understanding what you're proposing, an RFP process. I guess we'd like to work with that and take as long as it needs. I hate to put a time frame on it, but I really would like to get through the Heartwood process first before we really tackle the Cliffstown. I would agree that sending something like this to the Planning Commission might be an appropriate move. I mean, if you think about the Heartwood, it had a subcommittee that put together a plan over the course of a year just to do something with that property, and that really eased up, made it easier for us. So, you know, we're quite a bit ahead in the process when it comes to Heartwood, so it's a lot easier for us to deal with that, considering everything else that's happening in the city. I don't mean to squash your proposal, or your agenda, but I think some of my staff might quit tomorrow if I had to do it in 3 months. So.
I thought it was a squishy enough motion to give you a lot of flexibility to come back in 3 months and say, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, okay? That's why I made it without great specificity, okay? So, I mean, I think Commissioner Conley, I think you've heard our intent here, but I suppose we could just pass on this issue. I don't want to vote no on this issue and send that message to the developers, but at the same time, I'm not comfortable with the way it's configured. So, go ahead. Yeah.
There is a motion on the floor.
Commissioner Conley.
Commissioner Conley, what do you have to say?
I'm not trying to put the pressure on either. I just want to make sure that we do any proposal with the Cliff Dow on one partial tract or the entire thing, that it go through an RFP process with city commission guidance as to the requirements and our goals. And if we need to defer this discussion indefinitely and go ahead with the Heartwood discussion before that, I'm okay with that. I just didn't want to see this unsolicited single offer come in and rush through at a bargain basement price with no guaranteed yield. So if that was my main goal for my comments, and if we accomplish that by just letting this die, and then if you've gotten the message that about RFPs for selling tracts of city land, then I think we're good.
If you want to remove the motion, withdraw the motion, would you support them?
I'll support the withdrawal, yes. So
Is the rest of the commission fine with the withdrawal of the motion?
Do we have to make a motion here?
No, if there's a consensus at that motion to postpone consideration of this matter for 3 months, if that's being withdrawn and the commission as a consensus is okay with it, then that's considered withdrawn. There's no motion on this, and if there is no motion, it will simply die and to come
No
up
vote?
again
We don't
another
have to
day.
vote?
There doesn't have to be a vote on this.
Okay. I don't see any objections to letting it die. Do I see any? Okay, the motion has died.
That motion has been withdrawn, Your Honor. Now, there's no motion on the recommendation, that has died. Is that what you're saying?
So we are done with this item?
Yes. I'd like to thank the Hiawatha people. Don't you think we should thank them?
The Hiawatha people, we would like to thank for coming here. We appreciate your interest. We hope you continue to have an interest. We hope you will. We move to our last item of the evening, which is the Northern Michigan University Access Easement Agreements. City Clerk, background please.
Thank you, sir. As part of the planning process for the new municipal service center, it was determined to be beneficial to have access to Sugarloaf Avenue in addition to the direct access from Wright Street, which fronts the property. To gain access to Sugarloaf Avenue, the city must construct and install a road across the existing parking lot at the Northern Michigan University Services Building. The access easement was contemplated by the terms and conditions of the city's purchase of the NMU parking lot, agreement dated November 6, 2015. Since that time, city staff has worked with NMU on the attached access easement agreement, which has been approved by the NMU Board of Trustees and recommended for city commission approval tonight. Fiscal effect: there is no fiscal effect from this action. Recommendation: approve the attached access agreement with Northern Michigan University for a 30-foot wide ingress and egress easement granted from Northern Michigan University to the city at the new municipal service center. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Do we have a motion here? Commissioner Plort.
I move that we approve the attached access agreement with Northern Michigan University for a 30-foot wide ingress and egress easement granted from Northern Michigan University to the city at the new municipal service center.
Is there a second? Commissioner Baldini?
Support.
Comments, Mr. Plort, any?
Again, this is just a continuation of the action to finish up construction at the service center. They certainly do need this ingress and egress, and it's just part of the plan. We just need to get it done.
Thank you. Commissioner Baldini?
Nothing to say. Thank you.
Further comment anywhere? Where'd Commissioner Frazier go? He stepped out. Okay. Commissioner Frazier will not be voting on this. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? That passes 6-0. We now come to our second public comment of the evening. Again, a chance for residents to address the commission. You have 3 minutes. We need name, address, city, or township. I'm going to open public comment. Does anybody wish to address the commission?
Frank Giaverto. These are my opinions. April 10th, Mr. Campana accused me of slander and of making him look bad, only the latter of which is true. The sentence he took issue with was, quote, most fitting is his admission that he knows most everyone on that street, meaning he wasted $4,500 that belonged to us all equally to benefit a handful of friends, end quote. March 27th, he admitted knowing most of those people. Who else did the waste of $4,500 benefit? The point I tried to express without adequate time was the net effect, that Lake Street has become fancier, assumingly with more influential people, which plays right into my assertion that Marquette is going to the rich and that this board bends over backwards to promote that mentality. Furthering the suspicion is this board's mishandling of items more hurriedly than in the past 20 years, without the needed documents to give us our due chance to comment effectively. We saw an exception tonight. Prior comments to this effect have evoked no change, though. They simply care less whether we received a fair chance or not. Still, when Mr. Campana accused me of making him look bad, he's on target, and he looks worse each time he plays his game of rushing votes, and on April 10th, twice failing to comprehend what postpone indefinitely meant, likely because he was so rushed to approve the water mains that night for some reason we'll never know. April 10th, Mr. Pellord accused me of foundless accusations impeding my agenda. I have no agenda other than to demand due public process and the retention of Marquette's natural ambiance, with no possible economic or health benefit to myself. He lashed out in blanket statements, not mentioning what specifics bothered him. Such criticism is destructive. It keeps us spinning in circles and never resolves anything. He's correct in suggesting that my issues are often with the process, such as this board's propensity to rush items that warrant due diligence for reasons that are seldom clear. Mr. Pellord further claimed that public comments ought to be facts, not opinions. This platform is for facts and opinions. My comments contain both. Any prudent listener can tell which is which. I'm not the smooth talker he is, but because there's always a next meeting, the truth will prevail over talk every time. So far as his mention of tone is concerned, the other man who spoke on the Terollerhof property always uses a nice tone, only to be rolled over in the same manner as you roll over me, pretending what we said was never said. To approve the infrastructure having just seen a conceptual drawing was incredibly irresponsible. When Mr. Campana accused me of making him look bad, it's clear he blamed me for something he's done quite the job of himself. The public is urged to delve into specifics, which I'll back my life up on, unlike then. They never refer the public to the record because they realize that the record does make certain members look bad.
Anyone else wish to address the commission? Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. We're going to go to comments from the commission. We'll start with Commissioner Reynolds.
Knew that was going to happen. I don't have any real comments for the evening other than tomorrow is the deadline if anybody's interested in running for city commission or BLP. And the other comment I have is obviously on our consent agenda, Commissioner Baldini did bring up the fact that we are going to be addressing short-term rentals at our next meeting. And I know that the community's had a lot of thoughts and comments on this issue over and over, and we'd like to hear those again. So I would appreciate anybody who has any comments or issues with the current proposal to come forward and let us know. And that is all I have.
Commissioner Plort?
Again, I'd like to thank the Hiawatha Group, too, for coming up. I didn't realize that that property had any benefit until tonight, and I think we're all in the same boat. To address Mr. Verito, again, you use public comment to make unfounded opinions and groundless accusations. To be specific, as you continuously ask us to do, you did bring up an idea that we do need to consider Lakeshore Boulevard in the Cliffs Dow issue, but I have no idea what else you want us to continue to consider. And again, you basically wasted everybody's time with unfounded opinions and groundless accusations. To say that, for example, Mayor Campana did the action on Lake Street just because of his friends is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. However, I still want you to continue to use public comment. I just want you to use public comment for actual public stuff. Did I get it? Did I take offense to what Mr. Kimbenzi said? Yeah, I did, because he said after I had told him that I spent the weekend studying the proposals that I just looked at it today and made a decision on 5 minutes. That's simply not true. And he has no basis for saying that in public. And that's why I called him out on it. To continue with that, we did discuss that the next day, and we did come up personally with an understanding about what was discussed and what wasn't discussed, and we get along just fine. And that's fine with me. I will continue to ask people to come up to public comment and bring legitimate ideas for or against what we're doing, what we're not doing, to public comment. And again, Mr. Verito, you have complained to us many, many times that we've taken too much, we've gone too fast on our decisions. Okay? I will agree that for some people that may seem so. But in other meetings, you told us that we're dawdling and taking too much time, and we need to streamline what we're doing. So again, I ask you, what is it you want? Give us some legitimate direction if you want to be recognized as a legitimate public speaker. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do with your comments. It's as simple as that. I also want to thank Mr. Pelto, who came up and told us legitimately that he has no interest in the land that we're considering, but he is opposed to that. I'm glad to hear that. That's what I want to know. And again, when people come up to public comment, be respectful to the commission. I agree with Mayor Campana. This commission deserves respect, and I insist that we get that respect and bring up comments specifically about what we're doing and what you would like to see us do or not do. To waver back and forth and tell us in one sense that we're going too fast in one thing, and then next thing we're dawdling and we're not streamlining, basically you're just criticizing to criticize, and that does nothing for anybody. On top of all that, yeah, we have some elections coming up. People have declared for elections. I wish it known public that I'm not going to declare for any candidate before the November election in 2018. I don't believe that that's a smart thing to do or a proper thing to do for a Marquette City Commissioner. So that being said, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Plort. Commissioner Conley.
I've said a lot already. I'll keep it short. I left town last week. It was winter. Returned today. It was summer, at least early summer, and drove by Matson Park and looked at how green and nice it looked. And I want to compliment the Michigan Brewers Association for reconstructing that park. It actually looks better than it did before they used it. We were all horrified when we saw the condition half of it, but they've made good on their commitment, they've good on their promise, and they're welcome here, in my opinion, because they've done well. Take a look at that park. It is absolutely gorgeous. So I want to thank them, and mistakes are made, and amendments are made. They've made amends for the problem, and they stepped up to it. And right now there's no foul, no harm, no foul at this point for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Cambenzi.
Just one comment. The city band performed in Kaufman Auditorium this past week, and it was an amazing show. And I know we always talk about, as a city band and as a commission that supports them financially, how great it would be if they played in our 4th of July parade. And so after their concert, I had ideas about how to get a flatbed. Get them all on there, simply because the audience enjoyed their performance so much, and those that missed it wished they didn't. And so I guess I'd still like to encourage them to be part of the 4th of July parade. I think they would honestly steal the show. They are that good. So I do know the director and several people in it, and hopefully we can convince them before too long that maybe we can find a way for them to play. I think that would be the icing on the cake for our parade. So that is all. Thank you.
Commissioner Frazier.
If you do want to do that, sir, let me know. I have friends that work for a couple different equipment companies that could loan you a flatbed. And one of my daughter's piano teachers is involved with the city band. Next time she does piano, I could always bounce it off her, say, okay, well, if Sarah Kamenzi is willing to get you a flatbed, would you be willing to play on the flatbed? You don't have to march, because I was in marching band in high school, and I was in concert band, then I switched to marching band. Marching band is a lot more difficult than it looks, so I agree they don't want to march, but a flatbed, not a bad idea. And I also went to a meeting last week about, that was brought on by another company, and they talked about the smart car thing that's coming up eventually. They said another 5 to 10 years, they're saying we should maybe see smart cars, possibly Ubers. You know, between Uber and the smart cars company, it's going to come sooner or later. Just be prepared. Something's going to come. And like Commissioner Connolly said, summer's back for one day at least. I mean, we had summer yesterday or Saturday, then winter's Sunday, and then halfway decent today. We've all 4 seasons in, the usual 1 month. My wife had to travel downstate. She was 70 degrees downstate. It was 35 up here. I'm like, big surprise, but we'll see what happens. And I agree, the Lower Harbor looks good, and I've been busy down there helping put people's boats in the water, and that's something to let people know. It's going to be busy when the marina opens. It's going to be busy with boat traffic, with the people launching their boats or the equipment being used. So just look out for things going on. I know there could be busy. And I agree, the Matson Park looks great. I talked to the contractor when they was fixing it. I said, hopefully it turns out okay. Looks good. So, other than that, looks good.
Commissioner Baldini.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think we had a very good discussion tonight on the property issue, and I think the city manager probably has a sense. I hope, if you got that clarified, what we really want, you're really good. Okay, but I think it was a good discussion, and I want to thank the Hiawatha people, but I think it was something we had to do to take a long-term look at that. A couple of things. It's brush pickup. They're picking up the brush and the leaves, and the town is really greening up with the rain that we've had. And Commissioner Conley's point about the harbor Matson Park really looks good, and I think we all had some concerns about that. Couple of things. The Presque Isle Advisory Committee, in looking at their minutes, mentioned that nearly every Saturday from May to September of the pavilion is booked, okay? Which raises that whole question of the utilization of that island, okay, and what's happening there. The Harbor Advisory Committee also mentioned, and I think people will be pleased, that the marina, we have a new manager, and the city manager can probably talk about that, and I think the people will appreciate that. And I also noticed in the Planning Commission minutes that they were talking about medical marijuana, and that would require an ordinance if we had one in the city. I don't know if we've had a request for one, but in case we do, I suppose we're going to have to deal with it at some point, or maybe just ignore it. So, but thank you.
I have to reply to Mr. Veritol, and I really hate to do that. I just don't want to go to that level. But he says things that are lies and slander, and he says that they're 100% wrong. In particular, let's talk about the cutting of the trees on Lake Street. He said, and he implied, that I use my influence as mayor to benefit. You said that. Check the video. You do that about 100 times a week anyway, but check the video and see the words. He said that I use my influence as mayor to benefit a handful of friends. My question is, where did you get that information? Did you go talk to anybody? Where did you get that information, Mr. Veritol? I want to know that. Because you know what? That did not happen. You're 100% wrong. And you come up here and you say these things in front of the TV, in front of the commission, in front of my family. You say these things and you make me look bad. You make me look like I'm doing something devious and wrong. And you're 100% wrong on that, Mr. Veritol. So please be careful with how you choose your words. Think before you talk, please. That being said, my only other comment would be, we need to hear from Marquette General, kind of an update. Things, we need to come in and talk to us. That would be up to the city manager. City manager, do you have anything to add?
Well, you guys all started, I didn't, but now that you're done, I got a list. First of all, I'm working on communicating with Marquette General, so that's in the works. Second of all, to back you up on your tree cutting, that was purely my idea. You had nothing to do with it. You took the blame later on when you didn't have to, but that was purely my doing. Regarding Matson Park, part of that discussion is the Brewers Guild did a very nice job repairing it, but we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again, which is part of our process for this summer. And lastly, I want to apologize for kind of being just a little combobulated in that whole discussion. I was just happy that Ron was paying attention for a change and helped us through that. So, but that's all I have. Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Sorry. Oh, man, that's